Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back. I'm Dan.
And Alice.
And you're watching Plant Abundance on YouTube. So we're out in our backyard food forest on this beautiful afternoon. We're going to be doing some planting and just showing you around at some of the different things growing on, some of the different setups that we have that are working out for us. And we're also going to be doing some planting as well.
Honey, why don't you show your natural raised bed?
Yeah, come check this out. So you may recall last year, Alice and I were processing down one of the larger fruitless mulberry trees that were growing on the property. It was creating a lot of shade and not producing any food. So we replaced it with some edible fruit trees. And one of the things that we did with some of the larger branches and stumps is we made some natural raised beds. And because I didn't have a bunch of soil to fill these beds with, what I did is I just took some wood chips and some leaves that we had gathered on the property, and I've just been letting it break down for the last year. So let's see where we're at now. You can see there's sprouts. These look like either squash or calabash popping up. Not quite sure where they came from, but let's look in here and see where we're at if we're ready to plant here. It's still got some breakdown to do. I'm not seeing a lot of worms yet, but it's getting there. Not quite there yet, but this is a good way to get going. If you've got any type of natural material that can create a little container for your soil, why not use it? You know, we have this kind of towards the fence line, and I was thinking this would be a great area to get some plant starts going. And like I said, we're not quite there yet with the breakdown, so we'll give this a little bit more time. But I just wanted to share that with you. And check out this beautiful and abundant tree kale. This is a volunteer plant that grew up from a seed that dropped off of one of the other plants that are growing in the area. And we've got these large, beautiful, healthy, edible leaves, perfect for making wraps, sautés, throwing in your salad, your smoothie, throwing in a soup. Really, possibilities are endless. But this is true abundance, my friends. Gather some of these for dinner tonight. Now, I like to space out my harvests, but when you start pulling off these large leaves, what you do is you open up the plant so that the sunlight can get into some of these smaller shoots that are developing. I just broke one here. We can turn this one into a cutting. So I mentioned before, but any cutting that we take off of these plants is going to be an exact clone of the mother plant. And this is obviously a really good specimen here. This is something unique to this garden that has developed over the past 10 years. So definitely want to proliferate this one because we've got nice, healthy, beautiful leaves with purple tinge in there. Fast food on demand. So you can see here, right at the base of some of these greens, we've got a bunch of new little sprouts popping up, little seedlings. Again, just from seeds that dropped off of these mother plants. And each and every one of these can grow a slightly unique variety because it's coming from seed. And some of these plants may have been cross-pollinated with the bees going from one of these greens to the other. And so really it's like an endless just adventure for us here. Now throughout the winter, as I'm gathering up leaves that are falling on the grass in the back and the front yard, I'm collecting these in bags and letting them break down right in the bag. We'll get some leaf mold from that, which is great for the garden. And soon I'm going to dump these out in a big pile as part of my compost heap. So don't throw out your leaves or give them away to your green waste facility. This is like gardener's gold, organic material that's going to build up your soil. It amazes me how many people are gardening yet they're not saving the leaves for whatever reason. So even if you have a gardener that comes by every week and is doing the cleanup on your property, tell them to just make a pile of the leaves for you in the corner of your yard so they're not just getting wasted. So this is one of our annual garden beds growing in our garden. It's closest to the house, so we can easily come out and quickly pick certain things that we're growing throughout the summer months. Now, you see here, what I have is a lot of beets that I left in the ground that weren't harvested on time. At this point, the beets themselves aren't going to be very tasty, but the greens, a lot of people miss out on this. The greens are super nutritious and delicious and can be used in sautés, soups, and whatnot. So you may just want to consider leaving some of those beets in the ground and growing them for the greens. Another benefit to growing root crops and leaving them in the ground things like beets, but even more so, different root crops like carrot or daikon radish, is that they can be used effectively to help to break up hard and compact soil, clay soils, because when you get these big bulbs growing in the ground, it's going to break up and create these little gaps where once they start to break down into organic material and those worms come in, you're effectively loosening up the soil. Now as beets grow, they tend to start to grow up and surface towards the top of the soil. So they're not quite as effective at what I'm explaining as, like I said, carrots, daikon radish. But what you can do in this situation is just do a sheet mulch over your root crops like beets, and you're just going to create more fertility in the soil by allowing all these plants to break down and feed the worms that are going to come in and help to break everything down for you. So what I recommend doing is throughout the year when you get packages delivered to your home is to save those boxes so you have them on hand when you need it to do your sheet mulching projects. It really comes in handy, does a great job, and makes quick work out of prepping a new garden bed. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to begin to reclaim this little section of the garden and get it ready so that I can plant some new crops here in a couple months or so. And so some of these things I'm just going to basically chop and drop and start my sheet mulching technique. So I've got my Hori Hori here. This is probably my favorite gardening tool to have. Highly recommend it. You've got a serrated edge here, makes quick work of cutting. It's very strong for digging even to the hardest soils. So here we go. Now obviously these are edible, but it's also good for building up the soil. Area, I'm just going to unload some of these leaves. So you could use wood chips, you could use anything that's going to break down and create good soil. Some chop and drop. So in effect what we're doing here is we're blocking the sun from creating photosynthesis with the plants. And that's going to stop them from growing, help everything to break down quickly, and again, build up the soil. So I've had a lot of people comment on the fact that they've got all sorts of weeds and things that they're dealing with they can't seem to get a grip on. Just keep hitting it with a sheet mulch. You might not get rid of it the first go. So hit it with a sheet mulch, hit it with another sheet mulch. You can use wood chips, you can use leaves, pine needles, whatever you have. But over time, you're eventually going to reclaim that area and build some amazing garden soil. This mycelium started to run on this hunk of wood chips and those leaves. This is also a good sign in the garden. A lot of folks may not know, but if you see these little white strands, these hyphae strands, this is mycelium. And mycelium is like an underground network. Just picture cables expanding underground for miles. And what it does is connect to the roots of many of the plants growing in your garden, and it brings in some of the water and nutrients from far off and away. So if you see any signs of this in your garden, don't fret. This is a good thing. So Alice is planting some fava beans today. We know it's a good time because every year we get some volunteer fava beans from some of the pods that drop in the ground, and they're starting to sprout up right now. So the fava bean, also known as the broad bean, is a wonderful addition to any garden. So many uses. It's delicious. You can eat the leaves, you can eat the new tender tips of the new growth, you can eat the flowers, you can eat the young little pods that develop. And once they mature, you can take those beans inside and you can cook those, or you can even dry them and store them and cook them at a later time. They also fix nitrogen into the soil. And a way to guarantee your success if you're trying to create nitrogen in the soil would be to first inoculate your fava beans. You let them soak in an inoculant, and I'll leave a link below if you want to see what I suggest using. But there's many different products out there, and it's just a quick soak, and that's going to create a rhizobium bacteria on the seed, which is going to transfer into the soil and create a relationship, which then helps to form those nitrogen root nodules. Same thing you would do with peas and other types of beans that you grow as well. The second step with the fava is once it starts to grow up, as soon as you see it begin to flower, you would chop and drop the plant, and that's going to allow those nitrogen root nodules to drop off into the soil instead of being utilized to feed the plant itself as it continues to mature. I know that was kind of a mouthful. I have made videos on that topic in the past. Once again, always check the links below my video. I always try to leave helpful links below about things that I'm talking about or explaining, because there's really no need in me going over the same exact topic again and again. Here's another plant worth pointing out for you. This is oregano, and I use this throughout my garden as a cover crop. So basically, this is doing a great job helping to stop erosion, protect the soil, and keep moisture in. You can walk over this all day, it'll keep growing, and actually you'll smell the fragrance of oregano just walking over it, so it's great that way. And what I love about it is it's so easy to transplant around the garden. You can just dig up a little section and you'll get some roots on there. So this will grow a new plant, this will grow a new plant. It'll spread on its own slowly over time. But if we can help it along, I could literally make a dozen or so healthy plants just off that little chunk I just pulled out. So I love planting things like this around the border of my pathways. We'll just move some of those wood chips out of the way. This is just another example I love sharing with you guys, how you can start with just one plant in your garden and then multiply and multiply. Some other gardening duties on the agenda this week is to get my fruit trees pruned. Now you want to do this before these new little buds start to pop, and we're right there. We're having an early spring so far. I mean, we're probably still going to get some cold snaps. It happens every year. Usually in February we can even drop down below freezing. So I'm hoping that these trees don't wake up too early, but it looks like it's already about to happen. So it is what it is. Anyway, this is the time when you want to come out and you want to prune your trees to height, and you also want to take some of the inner growth out just to give it some breathing room, give some area for sun to penetrate. And I've made many videos on pruning my fruit trees, and you'll be seeing some more of that footage coming up real soon. So if you're new to growing fruit trees and you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. There's a lot more info to be shared over the coming year so that you can become empowered and start growing your own food in abundance at home, save yourself a lot of money, and enjoy time out in your garden, out in nature, away from the negative news and everything else that wants to take up your time, and instead create abundance in your life. All right, so I never got around to transferring these tree kales into pots, and they're fully rooted here in this play sand. So now what I'm going to do is take this batch of cuttings and create a tree kale forest in just a couple minutes. Watch how easy this is. So I think this year I'm going to interplant some of these tree kales with the artichoke. They should go together real nice and really create a beautiful display. So here again, I'll show you these cuttings that I stuck back in, I believe, October into the sand, and just let them be. Look at those roots. This is just play sand, which just means sand that doesn't have salt. The salt's been washed away. Nothing else. And mostly just natural rain watered this. I watered it a few times, but very easy way to propagate plants. And I'm going to plant these pretty dense. so that we really get a nice forest over here. And as I'm doing this, I don't want to waste any of the sand. I want to try to shake it off because I can reuse this sand again and again to propagate plants. Now, by interplanting these two different plants, the artichoke and these tree kales, we're utilizing this area to maximum effectiveness because we're layering our plants. The tree kale is going to grow taller than the artichoke, and it's going to take a while for it to get up there. So during that time, the artichoke will be able to fully mature and create some nice globes and beautiful flowers for us. And once they begin to expire, you're going to have these towering tree kale plants that are going to take over and grow throughout the winter for us. And these tree kales don't need a whole lot of sun. In fact, in some areas like Arizona and Texas, you may want to plant them in mostly shade. But they'll do good in full sun if you don't have really hot summers. But dappled shade is good, and not 100% shade, but mostly shade is usually okay. I've had good results pretty much wherever I plant these. And if you do live in a very hot climate like, again, Texas or Arizona, then having an overstory like these artichokes to help shade out the sun while they're getting going is going to be very helpful. These are also going to create somewhat of a microclimate, helping to shelter and insulate these plants during the winter if you live in colder climates. So here you see, we've gotten all the plants out now, and we're left with the sand to go ahead and do another batch of cuttings. Easy and clean, my friends. Well, that's going to do it for now, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you're having a great day. Until next time, this is Dan from plantabundance.com. Take care. We'll be talking to you again soon.